that people can hear me. I think my volume wasn't on before, but it should be on now. So as I was mentioning, we're under technical solutions, bringing order to chaos. And today we're going to be talking about processes, about why they're a foundational cornerstone to businesses. There is a course later this month, 20th to 24th. I'll be going through more detail of how to make process maps for yourselves, the sort of steps you'll be going through, and how to organize yourself, step back and look at it. But today's session is really all about why they're a key foundation to all businesses. So any questions, let me know as we go through this. We'll start in a moment. Today is a good day to be joining me because for the first time in several weeks, there's no children. My two youngest are at school, their first day back. My middle son is at friends and the eldest is at work. So got complete attention today, no distractions. And so we can focus. So let's start. As I said, any questions as I go through, let me know. So we're under technical solutions, bringing order to chaos. WTS is a business support, and as I mentioned right at the start, for those that weren't there, it's organizational, looking at the structure of the business, making sure communication gets to the right people and the right message, and that communication is structured so you don't get Chinese whispers of things being misinterpreted. Processes, which obviously is what you're here today to hear about, but vital to any business. Make sure there's efficiency, make sure that automation's in place. Planning, directly after this session, if you go to Eventbrite, you'll see that I host a planning session, 2 till 3 for small businesses. And I'm not looking at what you should plan, but more on the how you should plan, trying to bring your long-term goals, make sure that that vision isn't lost, and make sure that you're doing business development alongside your client work. Systems, there's so many applications out there that it is very easy to have 10 different systems that do little bits of things, but are they appropriate to business? It's another system that's, although more expensive in terms of an outlay, it's actually cheaper because it does multiple things and you get rid of some of those other elements. And administration, I'm available for short-term contracts. If there is a repetitive task, I can see what automation we put there. But if it's a one-off thing, it may be something I can just take off you, complete, and hand back as a final thing. I've got a degree in management of engineering technologies, but more importantly, over 15 years now in business improvement. But enough about me. Why do you need this strong foundation? Because there are legitimately 2 different methods that you can have to build a business. You can build it ad hoc. You can do an element, learn something else and bring it in, and just when it feels right, just build something onto the business and just, keep that general, just build a bit here, build a bit there. Why is that not a valid way of doing things? Because you'll see growth in both. As long as you're putting time in the business, the business will grow. The problem is that without that strong foundation, your growth will be limited. And it'll be limited because you'll reach a point where things are getting chaotic, where you're firefighting all the time, where you're checking on how staff are doing things and you're doing that monitoring, and you're working 80+% of your time just on trying to keep the business in track. And at that point in time, that isn't maintained, that busy, chaotic situation. You can't maintain that. That's not a long-term solution. And businesses do collapse under that weight of pressure. With a strong foundation, you've got your growth, you've got continued growth. And what we try and do, one of the technical solutions, is give you something that's scalable, something that you can then move on to the next level. And continuous improvement loops are excellent, but the main problem I have with continuous improvement loops is they show you going back to the start. You've got your can, do, check, act. How I like to see continuous improvement loops is as a spiral, where you start off in the center and you grow outwards. And yes, you get back to the start of monitoring, of checking, but you're growing each time. And it's not just a continuous, persistent, repeating loop, it's a growth loop. And one of the main ones behind that is process maps. Now, before going to process maps, it's good to start off with just generally defining what I mean for process maps. And a process map is a flow of activities and data. So inside your business, you're going to have multiple activities that you do, and that all will have a defined starting point, a element that kicks off that activity that you will work on and then move forward in. But within there, you're going to have some identifiable inputs, be that raw material if you're making products, or if you're a service industry like myself, you'll have information that will be part of the input of what you're doing. And those will help define some decisions within your business. Now, I've put the term here, binary decision points. I'm going to briefly after this just define what I mean by binary, but you'll have some decisions. That's the important part. And those decisions will allow you to have output. Again, we're not talking about final elements here. We're talking about elements. If you're having a product where it is a part of the product that you go into the end one, or if your service industry, it'll be an element of a report, or it'll be part of information that will go into some combined thing that will go to the client as a final structure. You've obviously got steps, processes. Won't be process maps without steps that you'll follow through. And those steps will eventually lead to an endpoint, something that you can define as an endpoint to a particular activity within your business. Sometimes these are milestones, and so sometimes activities will have multiple steps, and so you can have a sub-process that will have an endpoint as a milestone. Other times these are a finished product, a finished report, a finished piece of information, a finished communication, whatever it is, it will have something that will be able to define it as a finished element. And so that's really top level all a process map is. And a process map, although what you got here is some definable shapes, and if you join me in the course at the end of the month, we'll go through these shapes in a bit more detail. But at the end of the day, these shapes aren't the critical element. Having processes defined, the creation of the process map, where you're doing that on whiteboard, whether you're doing it with post-it notes, whether you're using a system like Visio like I do, the creation of the process map is an important step rather than exactly how the process map looks. With the exception of that decision point, which I'm going to touch on now, we've got a statement here, which if I was making a process map and I was asking a client what some of the inputs are having, and they could tell me that the client can choose between metal, hardwood, and plastic. Now, initially, you could just think, well, as a process map, it's going to look like this. What material did the client select? Metal, go to step A. Hardwood, go to step B. Plastic, go to step C. The issue is you won't see me on my process maps do that. And there's a reason. So on mine, it's going to have binary decision points. And all binary means is two options: yes, no, stop, go, wait, continue, whatever it is. There's multiple options, but at the end of the day, those options are defined down to two, depending on the particular situation. And initially, you could say, well, you get to the exact same point as the previous. Did the client select metal? Yes, step A. No. Did the client select hardwood? Yes, step B. No. Did the client select plastic? Yes, step C. However, we've now actually opened up a fourth option. What happens if the client selects a different material? Now, your response could be, we don't offer a third alternative. They have to select from one of these. Well, that in itself is a process. That is a step where you go to the client and you provide that statement. And then there's a loop in there that goes back to these options. That is a process, some simple steps that will lead you back into this. You could say, well, we then try and guide the client to one of these standard ones based on what their preferences is. And so whether they select this particular material, we then look to see whether the hardwood is best suited for what actually their intentions are. And again, you've got some steps there. You've even got some decisions there. You've got some dialogue with your client to come back to not just these exact same options, but to a specific one depending on the inputs. You could say, well, if we do the bespoke material, we do some extra steps. We follow, and now we're going to follow route D, and there are some other steps that we do for bespoke material. There's higher cost involved. There's more in-depth communication with the client. And again, you've got some other options there. The biggest thing to think about with this is you need to define even the non-standard options. The standard options are fine because you do them all the time and you can train somebody on the standard options. But when, as a sole business owner, when the non-standard happens, we just naturally fall back on our experiences. We use our experience to do whatever it is that the situation requires. This falls down as soon as you start bringing staff in. As soon as you bring people external to yourself into your business, be that permanent staff, part-time staff, or a VA that's going to work remotely from your business, they don't have that experience. They aren't you. They don't have the X amount of years that you've had in the industry. Unless you can give them a document that allows them to know what you do based on your experience, they're either going to contact you, and that's going to interrupt your general sense of how you're doing things, or they are going to make assumptions and they're going to go down a path that you, perhaps with your experience, wouldn't go down, and that can create problems for your business further down the line. So I'm going to be looking at 3 reasons why I think process maps are essential, why they should be a foundation stone to any business. What I would say is there is plenty more than these 3 reasons I'm focused on today. I'm focusing on 3 reasons on the sole premise that you don't have all day to listen to me to go why process maps are essential. This is it's the top 3 that I think of myself, but as I said, there are plenty more. Now, for this, we need to follow Bob or Bobby's story. Now, since I haven't got anyone on Zoom with me today, just people on YouTube and Facebook, I'm going to say that we're going to follow Bobby's story today. And I'm going to say that Bobby is, Bobby is 29. She has got a English degree that she did straight out of school. But she's actually a VA. I'm going to use a VA today. I haven't used that over this summer. I've been running this session several times over summer. So I'm going to go with something a bit different today. We're just going to go with she's the service, and that she is a VA. Now, there are lots of things that we could assign to Bobby. We could talk about Bobby's childhood. We could talk about what she's been doing in her 20s, traveling that she's been doing. We could talk about her goals, long-term goals. We could talk about her if she's single, married. The point is that Bobby is a unique individual. She has got some experiences that we could relate to, but at the end of the day, she is unique. She isn't anybody particular. She's just a unique individual, and she's just started this VA business. Prior to that, she was working in an office as a administration staff, and it was a fairly busy office. She constantly, was doing all sorts of activities, from typing to diary management to some project management, because the versatile nature of an administration, she knows systems fairly well. She knows document control. She's got a wide range of skills that she's picked up because that's the sort of level that administration is required at. It's not a simple typing job or anything like that. There's all sorts of elements that allows an office to continue. But Bobby knows that she wants to do more. She wants to go out and she wants to work for herself and do the sort of activities that she's been doing for other people. Now, because she's worked in an office for the past 5 years, she knows some general steps of how to do things. She's got some pretty good experience in the sort of project management, document control, the general systems and support. So she's got some ideas of how things are working. But she's obviously not going off by herself just to copy what she did in the office. She's got some brand new ideas in there that she is going to bring into the process, that she feels that she can enhance not only how she does things, but how she's going to do things for other businesses, which is her intent. Now, got a nice little simple process diagram here, but that's not what Bobby did. She's not writing things down because she's going to work for herself. These elements are inside her mind. She is got some ideas inside her head of how she wants to do things, but she's not strictly writing them down and, looking at how things are progressing. These are just ideas in her head that she wants to follow. But that's the core element of the business. As we all know, owning your own business means we have to step outside some of those core elements. And there's other things that we have to do, such as cash flow, such as marketing, such as quotations and sales. There's things that we need to do that aren't standard. And Bobby, she knows these aren't her expertise, but she's gone on some courses. She's joined some business groups that will give her some people that's going to surround her with some good ideas and their experiences. But the majority of these are going to be based on suggestions and training but she's still going to bring in her own ideas to it. She started her own business. She's strong-minded. She's not just doing copying, existing situations. So when she's looking at the processes and the training and the suggestions, she's taking those on board and then going, how does this fit how I work? How do these fit what I'm doing? And again, important to note, these are ideas inside her mind. These are just ways that she wants to work. Sure, with training, she's probably got some written notes. They're not going to be formal in the process map. They're just going to be recommendations that she's thinking to herself of how she would like to do it. Time goes on. 18 months pass. She's made some mistakes early on in her business, things that didn't quite go to plan as she expected, but she's also had successes, things that have gone wrong, and basically she has got some experience. She's got some relevant experience. These are the past experience based on an office environment. These are specifically experiences relating to her running her own business, understanding what works, what doesn't work, and through that, she's changed her processes. Again, she hasn't wrote them down, but she comes in and decides one day to do this instead of what she did previously, because what happened previously didn't work. That quote didn't quite land right with a potential client that she had, and she wants to do it differently next time. That Facebook post didn't quite reach the audience that she expected, so she's going to change things. There's all sorts of changes that are going to happen within that year that's going to change how she works, and they're going to change her overall processes. But that 18 months has been successful. And she's got enough clients on now that she actually wants to replicate what she's doing and actually have people support her, but also support her clients more directly so that she can take on a larger client base. And we're going to come back to Bobby's story in the very near future. So, did enough talking. It's time for yourselves to do a little activity that I pull in at this point in time, and all the sessions I've been doing this week. You saw some flash on there. I couldn't remember which picture. There's 3 options I've got, and I couldn't remember which one was on today. That's why you briefly saw that. So I'm assuming you all have had drawing experience, be that when you were 5 and you had a nice picture pop in the fridge, or maybe this is your profession and you're an artist and you do drawings all the time. Well, I'm going to commission you to draw me a picture, and I'm going to give you some instructions. They could be basics, so they should be fairly straightforward to follow. And then at the end, we'll see what you drew, and I'll go through what you should have drawn. Nothing more complicated than that. So let's start off, as I always do, with a horizontal line. 2/3 up the page, 1/3 down the page. Just a horizontal line across the page. 2/3 from the bottom or 1/3 from the top, whichever you prefer. Now, on the horizontal line, I would like you to draw a rectangle. I believe there is 2 more sessions of this, so if you're joining now and you'd like to join from the beginning, there's definitely a session next Wednesday. I don't quite remember what date it is next Wednesday, 8th. There's definitely a session on the 8th, and I believe there's another session on the 17th. So either side of that rectangle that you drew, I want you to draw a triangle. got the wrong shape there. Either side of that rectangle, I'd like to draw a rectangle. A triangle. So you should end up with two triangles either side of that rectangle. Would be useful if I could put my teeth in today. So you've got your two triangles, you've got your rectangle, and on top of that rectangle, but just going behind the triangles, if you will, a semicircle. Just a semicircle that goes behind the triangles on top of the rectangle. With the kids going back, obviously today, my children going back to school, we are almost into autumn. It's been a interesting summer. It's always quiet in terms of work because businesses don't do massive amount of development in August. So it'd be good to get back to some busyness in September and the autumn. So at the bottom of the page, going up to about halfway, if you can draw a trapeze. Now, if you don't know what a trapeze is, it is basically a triangle without a top. I briefly flashed up there, just if you caught it in time. It is just a triangle without the point. If you just put a trapezium at the bottom of the page there. Now, once you've got your trapezium there, if you could top it, imagine where the top of the triangle would be. But instead of that, if you could top it with a rectangle. No, but it's been good to do these sessions. We've had quite a few people over the summer joining us for these, and so people that could join us today, that's excellent. Appreciate now that we're starting to September that the numbers will drop off because people are back into work, into busy time, and so people that can join me today, thank you. Now, you've got that rectangle which you've just drawn. Now, if you imagine some wavy lines almost like eyebrows coming from the top points outwards, radiating outwards from there. So on top of that rectangle that you've just drawn, radiating outwards, some wavy lines, very similar but not quite to eyebrows. Now, we've got a bit of an intersect here. We've got that rectangle, we've got those wavy lines, and then dropping down from that exact same point, either side still, a line that's almost parallel with the trapezium. What are people's plans for the weekend? I think this will be the first weekend where I will be working some of it, not all of it, but just before kids clubs start the week after, because week after I've got a weekend of football with my youngest son. But this weekend I'm going to try and catch up with some early September work, which would be good to do prior to meetings next week. So we've got those parallel lines that we've just dropped down. Now, either side of those parallel lines, if you could draw some thin vertical rectangles, either side of those parallel lines, just follow the parallel lines, and say five on each side, just following those parallel lines, thin vertical rectangles. Now, once you've done that, I know you'll still be doing it, but if you just top each one of those with circles, but to make it more interesting, because this might be art, if you make them bumpy circles, don't we, all will become apparent. So why you draw those 5 on each side, thin vertical rectangles with some bumpy circles on top? Networking started, face-to-face networking has started. I was at my first face-to-face event on, was it yesterday? Yes, it was either yesterday or Wednesday. I think it might be Wednesday. And such a different experience standing up and speaking in front of actual humans instead of on a Zoom screen. I'd like to get back to doing training like this, face-to-face. This activity itself is much more interesting when you go around and see what people are physically drawing and point out some of people's conceptions. So we're going to finish up very shortly. At the top of the page, we've got a rectangle that we did on the horizontal line, and underneath we've got another rectangle where we did the trapezium. Between those, if you could do a semicircle topped with a triangle. Very simple. Semicircle topped with a triangle. If you could add that, that would be fantastic. And then very shortly, I will go through what you should have drawn. Got some more face-to-face networking. I think there's a session maybe next week. Well, it could be early the week after. After that, I'll be focusing on the course I have mentioned a few times, 20th to 24th. Please do join me for that, and we'll try and get as many businesses in as possible. So let me follow the exact same instructions I went through and see how close we got. We started off with a horizontal line, 2/3 up, 1/3 down, and we topped it with a rectangle. Despite saying the word rectangle several times as well, it should be 2 triangles on either side. Now we topped that rectangle, going behind the triangles with a semicircle. Then we have the trapezium, which I did very briefly show you, that triangle without the top. And instead of the point of the triangle, then we've got the rectangle. Radiating off those, going outwards, we've got the wavy lines. It's almost like eyebrows, but not quite. And dropping down, almost parallel to that trapezium, we've got the line. Either side, we've got the 5 thin vertical rectangles. And we dot them with circles, but because we're being artistic today, we've got some bumpy circles. And then to finish off, we had a semicircle topped with a triangle. Now, how many people got that? Why? Why didn't we get that? Was it my description? Was it the terminology I used? Was it was it your understanding of what I was saying, or my assumption on what you were hearing? Or was it a mixture of all three? It was a mixture. You see, verbal communication has limitations of passing on the intent of a particular situation. And someone coming into a business fresh, if the only training they're given is verbal communication, they're starting off with a blank piece of paper. They're starting off without any understanding or knowledge about what the intent is. But equally, if they're going into a business that's got a particular background, so accounting, we've got some of the finance terminology in engineering, We're going to have some manufacturing. We're going to have some terminology to do with the manufacturing process. Whichever industry it is, there's going to be terminology, there's going to be abbreviations, there's going to be the way people speak that for a new person coming in that industry that they won't know. So in this particular thing, I didn't mention the word mountains. I didn't mention trees or rivers or waterfalls or boat or sunset, or is that sunrise? Because I didn't know what terminology that would be that you would understand. Again, we started off with a blank page. I just kept it to basic, to the simple shapes. But equally with verbal communication, you don't actually know what people are taking away as the important parts of those instructions. In your head, you know what the important parts of the steps that you want them to do, but what they note down, what they write down may be very different. You may give them a set of instructions to go off and do, and they could come back with something very different than what you thought you said and what you thought that they heard. And you've got some options around that. You can sit with them throughout the entire thing and monitor how they're doing everything. You can repeat the training. You can do it and show them physically how things are doing, all of which are time consuming, all of which won't give you the confidence that you could leave them to get on with things. And that's really where process maps come in. Where process maps become that critical element, where I'm not saying get rid of the verbal communication, because communication in any business is vital, but combine that with a process map, which gives them the guidance of what you know is important, what steps they can do. Also, you create a training process map. So you create a process map where you say, at this point in time, come to me so I can see what you've done, and then we'll have a conversation about next steps to build up the understanding, so people aren't starting with a blank piece of paper. They've got some guidance. So that's really for the third reason I've got here why process maps are essential for training. Now, this isn't just internal. If you've got a VA working with you, I know this particular, when we talk about Bobby, she is a VA herself, but if you have a VA working with you, they have so many other businesses. They deal with so much terminology from each of them, and there's so many elements that they need to follow and work with. Giving them a process maps gives them the ability to follow what you need them to do without them needing to constantly be involved, contact you, without you constantly needing to know elements. So you give them more complex things to do, not just the extremely simple rewrite this typing exercise. You give them more complex things because you gave them a piece of your experience in a written form that they can follow. Now let's go back to Bobby. Bobby had these processes in her head that you've been following for the past year. They've been updated with experience. But now Bobby is going to get some staff. She's going to expand her ability to help her clients. And she knows that what she does, it works because it's been working. That's why she's got so many clients on at the minute. But she comes to one of the technical solutions. She comes to WTS and asks us to create her process maps. Now, when we do that, we don't have those nice colors because from a creation point of view, we don't particularly care where these steps came from. We don't care what came from her office background. We don't care what came from her initial ideas or what came from experience. They're all equal in terms of the creation of the process map. But something's going to happen. When we're creating these, Bobby herself is going to start noticing things because she's in this day in, day out. She's working this, but she's never seen it from the top level. She's not ever got an appreciation of how information flows, how product flows, how communication goes into her business and out of her business. And for the first time, she can start looking at something and going, I don't like the way we're doing that. That doesn't seem very efficient. I would like to do things this way. And we start using that experience to modify her processes to how she wants the business to be structured moving forward. Equally, someone like myself, it doesn't have to be Warrior Technical Solutions, although I obviously would like it to be. Somebody else can come along, someone independent, and ask the right questions. Ask, why do you do this? Oh, we do this because of this reason. Have you considered doing X? We can also come along and when Bobby say, I do this, and then I do this, and go, well, those two things aren't quite equal. How do you get from this to this? How do you get to those steps? What is the decision between them? What are the additional steps? And we can start looking at and building the actual minutiae of how things are done. But also, she's going to use this for training. That's the whole purpose of it, is to look at the training. And when she's looking at the training of her new staff, they're going to ask questions. Each generation uses technology in a slightly different way and has slightly different views on things. And they can ask, why do you do this? Have you considered doing this? If someone's worked in the industry before, there may be ways that they've done things in the past. Now, Bobby's response may be to these queries, nope, this is the way it works for me. Okay, end of story. But there also may be times, because Bobby knows that things change through experience, where she goes, never considered that. Didn't know that that particular application existed. Let me look into it and see if it can enhance the business. So through the fact that you've actually got the process maps documented, it means that Bobby can analyze how things work. But equally, the person generating it, someone independent, you can have someone internal in your business, as long as they have an independent stance that they can see the business from that top level and also can make those suggestions. But also people that are being brought in, trainers, even VAs, there's all sorts of things. Particular one, I don't think Bobby's going to have VAs working with her because she is one herself, but anyone impacting the business can have a workable suggestion on improvements. And so these process maps are going to morph. They're going to change with relevant experience because they exist. Just as any KPI within the business, when you do your cash flow and you see which month does what, and then next year you then make decisions based on past experience. Process maps are the exact same. Process maps allow you to have the knowledge and the confidence to make those changes. So why are process maps essential? Business improvement. If you don't have a process map as a physical existing document, you really, when you're making these changes to business, you're making them on a gut feeling. You're not making them based on something which you can then look at. Process maps, if you're bringing a new system and you have a process map in place, you can create a new process map of what you expect your intentions for that new system to do. You can see where it fits in the business, how it changes people's interactions with it and each other. And then when the new system comes in, you can then see how well that fits reality. And sure, intentions and reality are going to be different, but at least you've got a process map there which you can then morph and go, did it work as successful? And if things don't work, you've got previous revisions where you go back on, and you're not just changing bits and pieces of the business hoping for a certain outcome. You're making them based on known knowledge and a known process map. Now, right at the start, we made a decision between Bob and Bobby, and we went with Bobby. Bob is in his mid-30s. He has done various different things for small businesses. He's never really worked in an office environment as such. He's just been a person that's helped out small businesses on temporary contracts. And he's going to go into the VA situation. He's done very similar sort of things, but more on the site, and he's going to go more remotely. And so his background is a bit different to Bobby. He has got different knowledge. He's got more close hands on what small businesses need, but he hasn't got the experience of working on the larger projects. And so there are differences between Bob and Bobby that are quite significant. Again, we could talk about his childhood, his marital status, his aims and goals, but the main thing is that Bob he's going into the same industry as Bobby, with some different backgrounds and some different elements. But he also is expanding out. He's had a very good 18 months. He did some training similar to Bobby, but again, his outtakes from those trainings will be different. His unique elements that he's going to bring into it could be different. Even if he did the exact same course, he's still not going to come up with the exact same solution. It's going to be similar, but it's not going to be identical. And very similarly, he's got some people that he surrounded himself with, but again, they're going to be different. So the core processes, there's going to be some similarities because they're in the same industry. There's going to be some differences, and some of those differences would be big, and maybe in terms of how they communicate externally, maybe it's how they internally plan. Whatever it is, there are going to be differences between the two, even though the output's the same. Now, Bob didn't get his process maps written out. He didn't even create process maps. Instead, he is training people just verbally. He's given them instructions. He's getting frustrated because they don't always produce the results that he expects, and he's spending a lot of time monitoring and checking. And this is holding him back. And he's noticed through his various network chains that Bobby, who's similar sort of region to himself, seems to be attracting the bigger clients. She seems to be busier. You know, she seems from his outside perspective to be a bit more successful. Now, there's a thing that Bob heard that people often say, which is that people are the business, that people make the business. And he makes the assumption that Bobby's successful because her 3 employees must be better. Now, in this fictional world that we're just creating, he goes online and finds out that all of Bobby's staff like bacon. And so he lures them over to his business with the promise of bacon sandwiches and a small pay rise. Bobby needs some people because she's got clients that she needs to work on, so she ends up taking his staff. Now, Bob's assumption that people are the business, does that mean that because he's took on Bobby's staff, that all of a sudden his processes are going to be the same as Bobby's? No. Bobby, she's got some people, they've got some experience, but she's going to still rely on her process maps. She's still going to train them against their process maps. Maybe they'll come up with suggestions she hasn't considered. Maybe now she will consider them, but she doesn't necessarily need to implement them. She'll still expect people to follow her processes, to relate to the document that contains her experience, her knowledge, for them to follow. Similarly, although Bob has took these three people because he feels that Bobby is more successful because of them, he's not going to give them a free range. He's not going to just give them all the scope to just do what they want, because he will still have some fixed thoughts and ideas of what he wants with his business, about why he thinks he's going to be successful in the long run. And he's still going to be doing his training through verbal communication, through trying to show them how to do things, by sitting with them, by monitoring them. He's still going to have the same problems they had before. Now, that isn't to say that people aren't important to the business, but when we say people are the business, what we're really meaning is the culture. People bring the culture of the business, because what you remember 10 years after working in an office isn't the day-to-day what you did. It's the conversations you had with people. It's the talking about family. It's talking about what you did the weekend. It's about talking about the local sports team. That's what you remember. That's where you build the relationships up. The minute-to-minute working about how you did a particular report, or how you communicated, or project management, or whatever it is, that doesn't stick. However, that minute-to-minute, that's what makes a business successful. The processes that you follow is what makes a business unique. The steps that a business goes down is what makes the business produce what it produces. And that's the business. The processes are the business. That's what makes a business different from another business. That's how a business will succeed or not succeed. Now, Bobby. So the first reason, the number one reason why process maps are essential to a business, is because they represent the business's DNA. They represent really what the business is. So going through the three reasons again, you've got training. So people aren't starting off with that blank piece of paper that we talked about before. You've got business improvement. So you've got a document where you can make decisions based on known facts, known elements. And they represent what makes the business unique, the business DNA. Now, Bobby continues being successful. She'd never considered Bob it was never really in her thought. And she's actually built up a team who's doing, this collection of VAs that work under her. She's not really doing the VA work per se herself, but she's got a team of people that do it, that support a large proportion of the local businesses. No one has said that people aren't the business. There are exceptions. And so I don't want to devalue people. And we've got Tim here. Tim has been excellent at marketing. Tim has been really successful for Bobby's processes and how she does things. And because Tim has a natural knack for it, Bobby has sent him some courses, some particular detailed, in-depth courses on marketing. And when he comes back, she's going to give him the marketing department. Now, we mentioned right at the start that things like marketing weren't Bobby's strength. Her strength was the actual VA structure, the administration, the documentation, the project management, not necessarily marketing. Now, if we think back to that picture that we drew earlier, if I got an artist and I gave them some actual instructions, some detailed instructions, because that's the industry they're in, and I told them about the mountains and the waterfall, the boat and the sunset and the tree-lined river, they could produce a masterpiece and a fantastic piece of art based on those instructions. It's very similar to bringing in an expert into your business that's an expert in a particular field. They will take what you've got and enhance it, take it to the next level. And Tim's no different. Tim takes the processes that Bobby has done based on a training and experience and enhances them, makes them better. Now, they're not going to be completely rewritten for a number of reasons, but one of which is that people that we work with, generally speaking, are people that have a similar mentality to ourselves. We have an understanding. That's how we can work with them. So the most successful business relationships are those with a similar sorts of thinking. And on that level, although Tim will make changes and Bobby will want to be involved in terms of making sure those changes aren't, too far, she's going to have confidence in Tim. She's going to have confidence in Tim because she knows the way Tim thinks, and also because she knows and trusts his expertise. And so, as a business develops, as it becomes scalable, there will be elements of a process that will break off into its own individual element. And with the right people in place, they can be enhanced. So there are the three reasons why process maps are essential, why there should be a foundation stone to any business, making that scalable element. So you start off with something which works for the 3 people you're working with or the couple of VAs that you're working with. And then as your business expands, as you bring in more people, that process will break off as people do different elements to it. Each time based on known results, that business improvement, and each time giving the person coming in that knowledge of experience. So when the non-standard happens, they've got a document that they can go back to. Process maps aren't about restricting creativity. They're not about restricting how people work. It's about identifying the fixed key elements, recording those, and recording all the non-standard elements that can also go with it, so that you can go on that holiday and you know that your business is going to continue because you know that the people that you put in place have got that training, got that document they can rely on, and going to follow it from a business DNA point of view. Now, as I've mentioned a few times, I do have a course. If you scan that QR code on screen, it'll take you to Eventbrite where you can book. It's 20th to 24th, a 5-day journey where I will take you through the process mapping. And those 5 days, the first day for the blank page, where go through how to step back, how to remove your preconceptions of your own business, the structure, and then we've got creativity versus restrictive, which is some of the elements I was talking about there, about how process maps can work in a creative environment just as well as a fixed structure, the test and confirm cycle, and then last, because it's probably the least important in terms of development, is the format and styles. The course, as I mentioned, is 5 days. It's going to be there's going to be a private Facebook group which you'll join. Every morning on Zoom, I'll have a session very similar to this on the particular subject from 9 till 10. Those videos will be available throughout the day, so if you can't make it on the particular time, you can go back to there. There'll be actions assigned, because obviously the whole point of this is that you'll start to produce your own process maps. And in the evening, 8 till 9, there'll be a discussion session where I'll be able to discuss in one-to-one situations sometimes and in group situations how the learning for the day relates to your particular business, how we make it bespoke to what you want, because as your business is bespoke, so should your process map be. It'll obviously be my own unique insights, and that's why there's only 15 businesses being invited to this, because I want to have that one-to-one element with as many as you can. No process mapping software needed. A computer or Zoom, obviously. Microsoft Office will be a massive help because it's got the symbols and everything in it. But pencil and paper will be sufficient. We've run out of time. Just one last thing. The course is £700. If that's a problem because of you being a small business, contact me. There are some WTS subscriptions we can get you on. They'll allow you to be part of that course without that initial outlay. So contact me. Apologies for that. And we can have that discussion. And thank you very much for your time this afternoon. Any questions, get in touch and we will I will respond as best I can. Thank you very much.